That dinner looked like something straight out of a family magazine, an elegant dining table, flickering candles, laughter echoing through the room. I had thought that tonight would be nothing but the joy of reuniting with my son and his wife. But suddenly, the phone in my pocket vibrated softly. On the screen, a message appeared cold enough to suffocate. "Stand up, leave immediately, keep absolute silence. If not, you will not have another chance." My heart pounded wildly. My trembling fingers quickly shoved the phone back into my pocket as I tried to keep my voice calm. "Sorry, perhaps Dad is feeling a bit unwell. I need to step outside for a moment." Vanessa Reed forced a smile, while Nathan Bennett was sweating. I stood up, walked outside, ignoring the heavy gazes clinging to me. The sound of sirens tore through the night. Red and blue lights stopped in front of the mansion. Police knocked on the door, and that was only the beginning. Every scheme, every act of ungratefulness, in the end, must be paid for. Write your thoughts below this video. Press like and subscribe so you don't miss the truth behind it, because this is a story you will not want to miss a single detail of. That night began so simply. The soap bubbles clung to my aged hands as I scrubbed the old teacup of Margaret Bennett, the cup I used every night, along with one plate, one fork, and one knife. The repeated ritual of a widower, accustomed to silent solitude. The small kitchen was quiet, heavy with the scent of time's decay. The old ceiling lamp flickered faintly, trembling whenever the winter wind whistled through the cracks of the door. From the pipes came the smell of rust mixed with the stale scent of cold tea, forming a musty odor, familiar yet unpleasant. The wall clock ticked slowly, like tiny knives slicing through the silence. Margaret once said this lamp made the room warmer, but now it only highlighted the emptiness. I dried the cup, placed it back in its usual spot on the shelf, as if keeping order still carried some meaning. The chair opposite the dining table was covered with a thin layer of dust. I still kept the habit of setting out a second set of silverware, but it had lain untouched for years. For 2 years, the house had not echoed with the call of Dad, only the sound of my slippers dragging across the wooden floor, answering back to myself. On the refrigerator door, a faded family photo was held by a worn piece of wood. In the photo was Nathan Bennett, my son, on his high school graduation day. He beamed in his gown. Margaret wrapped her arms tightly around him, her eyes shining with pride. And I, standing slightly to the side, struggled to hold back tears as I clicked the camera. In that memory, I could still hear Margaret's laughter, still feel the weight of her hand resting on our son's shoulder. Now, only the dull hum of the old refrigerator remained. That photo existed not because it was beautiful, but because it was the last time I felt we were truly a family, before the arguments erupted, before the demands for money appeared, before silence clung to us like mold on the walls. The phone suddenly rang, its sharp sound cutting through my stream of memories. I flinched, nearly dropping the dish towel, fumbling to grab it. On the screen appeared a name. Through my reading glasses, the name that appeared left me startled. Nathan Bennett, my son. I stood frozen beside the kitchen table. 2 years of silence stretched like an ocean, impossible to cross. The last time we spoke was the night he walked out, after I refused to give him $95,000 to start a business, a project that sounded hollow from the start, doomed to fail. I had built an entire chain of restaurants, beginning from a small food cart, from meals served with my own hands, from each customer one by one. I understood the true value of labor, and I would never throw away my life's work on a dream built on empty borrowing. My hand trembled as I pressed to answer. "Hello." My voice cracked, more hesitant than I wanted. "Dad." His voice came through, no longer sharp like the day of our argument, but trembling, uncertain like when he was a boy caught in a mistake. Dad, I don't know where to begin." I swallowed down the lump in my throat. Is it really you? Is it really you?" "I know," he cut in, his voice breaking. "It has been too long, far too long." I could hear his quickened breathing on the other end, as though just making this call had taken all his courage. "But I don't want to stay silent anymore," he continued. "Vanessa and I, we miss you. We miss family." The word family fell into the air, lingering. To others, it was just two familiar syllables. But to me, it was both tender and painful, like a dull knife twisting deep into my chest. It had been so long since I had heard my son speak that word. "I miss you too," I replied, surprised at the honesty that slipped from my lips. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. I could clearly hear the heavy breathing, as though both of us were trying to swallow down the years that had been lost. Then his voice returned, lower but steadier. "Dad, can you come for dinner tonight? Vanessa is making the stew you like. We want to talk, like the old days." I leaned back in my chair, my mind spinning. So many years of coldness, now wrapped inside a single, simple invitation. "Tonight?" My voice slipped out, half joyous, half bewildered. "Tonight," he confirmed firmly, then softened. "Thank you for giving us another chance." The silence returned when he hung up, but the word "Dad" still echoed in my ears, pressing heavily against my chest, while also reigniting a flame long extinguished. I looked toward the fireplace mantel. Behind the glass, Margaret Bennett was still smiling. The wedding photo of Nathan Bennett and Vanessa Reed rested beside it, where she once whispered to me, "It will be all right, Arthur. Families always find their way back." Tonight I wanted to believe her more than ever. I rose from my chair, both hands clenched tight, carrying within me a resolve I had not felt in many years. The following afternoon, the upstairs bedroom felt like a small museum, where scarves, perfume bottles, and a thin layer of dust seemed to still carry the breath of Margaret Bennett, evoking an entire era long past. I opened the wardrobe. My hand brushed over each work shirt, stiffened with grease stains, until it touched the navy blue suit still wrapped in plastic. Margaret had bought it for me on the day Nathan graduated from college. "You need to have a proper suit for important occasions," she once said, gently smoothing the fabric with her careful hands. Every stitch of that suit was not just cloth, but seemed to hold the faith she placed in me, in Nathan, in this family. It had accompanied me through several anniversaries, through meetings with important partners, and even through her own funeral. Tonight, it would once again follow me into a new journey, the journey of returning to my son. In the bathroom, the mirror reflected a face I could hardly recognize. Deep wrinkles carved into the skin, gray hair steadily overtaking the old black strands. It was no longer the man I used to be, but a stranger, tired, yet still forcing himself to stand tall. Before leaving, I opened the drawer of the nightstand. Inside was the watch Margaret had given me on our wedding day. "So you'll never lose time with me," she had joked when she handed it to me. I wound it, listening to the tiny ticking sound, a familiar rhythm like breathing. Then I fastened it around my wrist. Deep inside, I believed that tonight she would walk with me through every turn of the clock's hands. I booked a ride through the app. Destination, Scarsdale, New York, 35 minutes away. A completely different world compared to the modest home in Woodside, Queens, New York. I held tightly to a 25-year-old bottle of wine, a small gift for the dinner, a symbol of reconciliation. The trip was silent. The town receded behind me, streetlights trailing one after another in dim succession. Then came the endless highway, followed by neatly trimmed lawns and rows of luxurious houses. Scarsdale was the kind of place where the snip of hedge clippers could be heard every morning, and sprinklers performed not for passers-by, but solely for the pride of the owners. The farther I went, the more I felt myself leaving behind the world I knew, the world of grease, sweat, and the kitchen. When the car stopped in front of a mansion with a grand gate, its dazzling lights almost blinding me, I could hardly believe my eyes. This was Nathan's life. How had he managed to achieve all of this? I stepped slowly out of the car and approached the gate. My polished shoes, though still showing their age, clicked sharply against the cold stone. The front door opened before I had the chance to knock. A woman appeared around 55, wearing a neat black dress, her demeanor composed. Her eyes looked weary, but her voice was warm. "Mr. Bennett, please come in. I am Rosa Delgado." In her gaze flickered something that made my heart sink, a blend of gratitude and concern, but the moment passed so quickly I could not be sure if I had truly seen it. The grand hall stretched wide, polished marble floors reflecting the glow of a brilliant chandelier above. Expensive paintings lined the walls in perfect symmetry, radiating luxury. In the air drifted a faint fragrance of lilies, both elegant and refined. "Dad!" Nathan's voice echoed from the end of the hallway. He appeared, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, his hair sleek and neatly styled, his radiant smile as though he had stepped out of a magazine. He embraced me, his arms holding tight, longer than usual. I awkwardly patted his back, feeling more uneasy than familiar. "Dad, you look wonderful." Before I could respond, Vanessa Reed stepped out. Her silk gown embraced her figure, her face carefully made up, her ears glittering with diamonds. She brushed a polite kiss against my cheek, the gesture precise like a ritual of etiquette. "Arthur, at last you've come. We truly are so glad you could be here." I forced a smile. Yet inside, the ostentatious luxury of the house pressed down like an invisible weight. "This place, it's incredible. How did you—" "Just real estate," Nathan quickly cut in, his laugh ringing hollow. "Right time in the market, just a stroke of luck." Vanessa promptly took my arm, her voice sweet. "Come, let us make you comfortable." I handed the wine to Nathan. His eyes lit up at the sight of the label. "Dad, this is wonderful. You didn't have to." We entered the dining room. A long cherry wood table stretched before us, with stew served in gleaming white porcelain, silverware aligned in straight precision. The chandelier above cast a golden light that wrapped the entire room like the pages of a glossy magazine. My seat had been prepared at the head of the table. I sat down, yet I did not feel like the master of the house. Instead, I felt like an honored guest in a play whose script I did not know. Vanessa smiled with well-meaning grace. "We want tonight to be truly special, to start everything anew, and wish you a wonderful dinner." I gently smoothed down my suit, my eyes drifting around the luxurious room. For a fleeting moment, I felt a fragile thread of hope weaving itself back together within me. Perhaps Margaret had been right. Perhaps family, after all the years of silence, could still find its way back to one another. But then, the phone in my pocket vibrated. I pulled it out, its screen glowing beneath the glitter of the chandelier. A message from an unknown number appeared. "Stand up. Leave immediately. Keep absolutely silent. Otherwise, you will not have another chance." Each word was chilling, dancing across the screen. My throat tightened, sweat beaded in my palm until the phone nearly slipped from my fingers. My heartbeat pounded violently, as if it wanted to burst through my chest. At the far end of the table, Nathan's laughter rang out. It was too loud, too brittle, too forced. It wasn't the laughter of a family reunion dinner, but the hollow laugh of a man throwing up smoke screens to mask his inner tension. Vanessa reached out to pour more wine, her movements flawlessly graceful. The smile on her face looked carved in stone, but in her eyes, I caught the glint of something sharp and cunning like a blade hidden in velvet. Neither of them noticed my hand gripping the napkin so tightly that veins stood out. The fabric crumpled in my fist. I feared that with just a blink, my panic would betray me. I forced myself to stand. "Sorry. Perhaps Dad is feeling a bit unwell. I need to step outside for a moment." Nathan gave a thin smile, though his gaze remained sharp, like a gambler calculating the odds before rolling the dice. Vanessa placed her hand on my arm, lingering longer than necessary. It was not care, it was control. I stepped into the hallway. Behind me, the clinking of cutlery and low conversation faded into a muffled blur. I leaned against the cold wall, breathing hard. Who had sent that message? How did they know I was here? In that instant, everything blurred, pulling me back to another house, another time. Margaret's gentle laughter echoed in memory, filling the small kitchen in Woodside, Queens. That day, she was baking Nathan's 18th birthday cake, flour dusting her hands. Nathan had walked in late, carrying the faint smell of cigarettes he swore weren't his. I still remembered his evasive eyes, his half-formed excuses about friends, about being misunderstood. "He's just a boy," Margaret had whispered afterward, her hand brushing my shoulder. "Don't be too hard on him, Arthur. He will grow up in time." But even then, I had seen in Nathan's eyes something that had nothing to do with food or family. It was another kind of hunger, the craving for shortcuts, for wealth without work, for admiration without effort. Margaret once believed that marriage to Vanessa would anchor him. On the wedding day, she whispered, "Vanessa is a good girl. She will bring Nathan closer to family." But seeing Vanessa tonight, her fingers heavy with jewelry, her eyes as cold and sharp as knives, I understood we had been wrong. She had only driven him faster toward the abyss. The hallway clock chimed a low note, pulling me back to the present. I straightened my tie, forcing my trembling hands into steadiness. Gently, I rolled up my sleeve, revealing Margaret's watch. The gold plating had long since faded from years of my fingers brushing over it. The ticking was steady, patient, a reminder that time waits for no one but memory always remains. Tonight, more than ever, I knew I needed it to keep my balance between faith and fear. A voice sounded behind me. "Mr. Bennett." I turned around. Rosa Delgado stood in the middle of the hallway, holding a tray of empty glasses, balanced perfectly. But her hand trembled slightly, the dim light from the hallway casting a long, thin shadow behind her. Her eyes lingered on me for a moment longer than usual. Though her lips did not move, that look spoke clearly. Do not trust anything inside that room. It reminded me of the look Margaret Bennett once gave me when Nathan was still a child. Every time he lied, clumsily, gentle, sorrowful, yet resolute. Rosa spoke, her voice slightly hesitant. "Is everything all right, sir?" The short pause in the middle made it sound like a double question, both a polite formality and a warning. I forced a smile, but the muscles in my face were stiff as stone. My heart pounded so hard I feared she could hear it. "All right, I was just catching my breath." She nodded slowly. But when her gaze briefly shifted toward my pocket where I had just tucked my phone, I knew she had understood. Moments later, she turned away, quietly disappearing into the kitchen without another word. I took a deep breath and returned to the dining table. Nathan Bennett leaned forward, his elbows resting on the surface of the polished cherry wood table. He stared at me intently, his eyes probing like a predator. "All right, Dad? You look as if you've just seen a ghost." The smile that spread across his lips seemed warm, but beneath it was full of calculation. I sat down, trying to keep my voice steady, though my throat was hoarse. "All right now, it's just that meals this luxurious, I'm not used to them." Vanessa Reed laughed, her laughter crisp yet hollow. "We'll make sure you get used to it. We want you to come here more often." 4. Those words should have carried warmth, but instead, each syllable felt like a new link, tightening around my wrists. I could feel them constricting, tightening, making every breath heavier. For a long time, I just sat there, letting their conversation drift past like a blurred background. I nodded politely, dropped a few responses when unavoidable, but my mind had already drifted back into the past. I remembered the many times Nathan demanded sums of money beyond all reason. I remembered clearly his firm voice, almost challenging, when I refused. The door slamming shut, the roar of his car into the night, leaving a cold emptiness behind. Margaret Bennett stood by the window, tears falling silently. She tried to hide them, but I still saw. "You did the right thing," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We cannot keep rescuing him forever. He has to learn how to stand up on his own." But he did not stand up. He only became more skillful in his pleas, knowing how to sharpen his smile just enough to be convincing. That memory clashed violently with the present. The perfect stew on the plate before me, the glass of wine shimmering untouched. Vanessa Reed's calm laughter, Nathan's fingers tapping impatiently on the wooden table. Everything was too perfect, too polished, like a play rehearsed too many times. Then the phone buzzed softly in my jacket pocket. A familiar sound, but this time it struck like a hammer to my chest. I shifted, secretly sliding it out beneath the tablecloth. A message from the same unknown number. The wine is not safe. Be careful. Do not let them force you to sign papers tonight. My body stiffened, my throat constricted, my breath grew rapid. The glowing words on the screen were no longer advice, but an urgent warning, forcing me to face the truth. My eyes swept quickly across the table. Nathan's glass was half empty. Mine was still full, crimson shimmering under the chandelier. Vanessa leaned toward me, her hand gently pushing the glass closer. Her voice was soft as velvet, yet behind it was an urgency she could not hide. Dad should take a sip, Arthur. It will help you relax. Nathan's laughter followed immediately, crisp but hollow, too loud, too rushed. Yes, Dad, that's the bottle you brought. I heard that tone, and the old memory rushed back. When he was 10 years old, holding a baseball, swearing he did not break the neighbor's window, though the ball was no longer in his hand. I forced a smile, then carefully set the glass aside. Maybe later. I want to savor it slowly. Vanessa's smile faltered for a second. Nathan's fingers stopped tapping. A heavy silence dropped over the table, long and oppressive, before they hurried to fill it with scattered bits of conversation. But I no longer heard clearly. In my chest coiled a strange sensation. Someone in this house knew the truth. Someone was risking everything to warn me. And I had a strong feeling I knew who it was. Margaret's watch on my wrist ticked, each beat louder than their laughter, louder even than my own fear. I swirled the wine gently in my hand. The red liquid gleamed like fine vintage, but when tilted at another angle, I saw tiny specks spiraling at the bottom. Not dust, but the trace of some intricate trap, though I did not yet know what they intended. Vanessa leaned closer, her heavy perfume enveloping me. Arthur, you haven't taken a sip. You always loved a good glass of wine. The smile on her lips was tender, but her stiff face was etched with tension. I slowly set the glass down, speaking softly. I am only drinking more slowly. Just touching the rim made my fingers tingle, as if the poison itself could seep through the glass. Nathan let out a forced laugh, his voice loud. Dad always had discipline. That's why you built an entire restaurant chain from nothing. I remember. He glanced at Vanessa, then back at me. The way he spoke sounded rehearsed. I replied, slower and steadier than I felt. That's right. Discipline and trust. Exactly. Nathan cut in instantly, too fast. Trust is everything, and that's also why we want to talk about the future. The word future fell heavy, like a verdict. I clasped my hands tightly, a coldness spreading in my chest. Go on. Vanessa placed her hand on mine, feigning care. You have worked your whole life, never thought about resting, letting someone else carry the weight? A succession plan, perhaps? 1. Nathan rushed in, his grin so wide it nearly tore the mask from his face. You know, Dad, to make sure your legacy continues, we can't miss the opportunity. I pulled my hand back, keeping my expression calm. But inside, a fire burned fiercely. The reunion, the stew, the polished silverware, all had been just a prelude to this moment. My legacy is fine, I replied, evenly. Vanessa's smile wavered. Nathan pressed harder. Dad, not now, but soon. You have 8 restaurants, plus properties all over Queens and Brooklyn. Too much for one man. What if something happened? What if you got sick? Margaret's whisper echoed in my memory the night Nathan caused an accident and begged us to pay compensation. If we keep rescuing him, he will never learn how to stand up. I looked at my son now, a man in a tailored suit, but his voice still the same as that child long ago, craving shortcuts, craving applause, terrified of failure. Life is always uncertain, I said, stressing each word, but there are things you must do yourself to make them worthy. Silence spread across the table, so heavy I could hear the hall clock ticking each second. Just then, Rosa Delgado emerged from the kitchen, carrying another tray of glasses. Her hands trembled slightly, the clinking louder than usual. For a moment, her eyes flicked toward me, pausing on the untouched wine glass. A single glance, but filled with both fear and a desperate plea. Then she turned away, vanishing like a shadow. Nathan broke the tension, his voice sounding too casual, too light. You know, Dad, Vanessa recently read about power of attorney. Just in case something unexpected happens, families should be prepared. Ice flooded my veins. Prepared? I repeated slowly, feeling the weight strike through every syllable. Vanessa chimed in at once, her voice dripping with sweetness. That's right. Nothing is better than family. I smiled faintly. Sometimes outsiders can be very loyal too, I murmured, glancing toward the kitchen door where Rosa had just disappeared. Neither of them noticed the meaning in my tone. The conversation shifted to other matters, but my mind did not. My eyes lingered on the stack of papers near Nathan's elbow, half hidden under the tablecloth. Not a menu. I could see clearly the notary seal peeking out like a coiled snake, waiting for the strike. Vanessa leaned in, her voice practiced, changing the subject. Tell us about the restaurants, Arthur. 8 of them, right? Which one is doing best? Her eyes sparkled, not with curiosity, but with calculation. I lifted my glass of water, letting the coolness extinguish the fire in my chest. They're all fine, I answered vaguely, calmly. Each place carries a little of what Margaret left behind. Advice, a hand, patience. They were built on more than numbers. Nathan chuckled, but the sound was hollow. Sentiment is nice, Dad, but sentiment doesn't pay bills. Business is profit, expansion, growth. You taught me that yourself. I looked straight at him. For the first time in years, I did not see a grown man, but still the same boy hungry for shortcuts, hungry for applause, afraid of failure. You remember what I taught, I said in a steady tone, but did you ever truly learn it? His smile vanished. Vanessa shifted uneasily. The room grew colder, as if even the walls could hear the words that had never been spoken before. I glanced at the glass of wine. Under the light, the murky residue looked like fragments of shattered trust. My heart pounded violently. I had to act. I had to think. Excuse me, I need a moment, I said, slowly rising. This time, the restroom. Nathan forced a stiff smile. Of course, Dad. Second door on the left. Vanessa Reed's smile remained flawless, but her eyes followed my every step. The air behind me felt so dense it was as if each footfall echoed with the weight of their stares. Once in the hallway, I immediately pulled out my phone. The screen lit up, and a new message appeared, more urgent than anything. Do not sign anything, not tonight. Do not trust their smiles. Watch their hands, their papers. I slapped my face lightly. This was no longer imagination. This was the truth. Someone inside this house knew exactly what was happening. Someone wanted to save me. On my wrist, Margaret Bennett's watch ticked urgently, like another heartbeat, as though she herself was urging. Do not delay. I clenched my fist, whispering, I hear you, Margaret. I turned toward the kitchen. The sound of running water, faint clinks of dishes touching. Rosa's soft humming drifted, as though she sang only for herself. My steps slowed, cautious. She did not lift her head when I entered. Her shoulders were tense, hands scrubbing the dishes too harshly, the clattering sounds sharp and harsh. A long evening, I said softly. She nodded, replying in a low voice. Yes, sir, there is something urgent. I had not yet asked when the sound of Vanessa Reed's heels echoed in the hallway. Cold, each step like a countdown. Rosa stopped humming, her eyes darting quickly toward the door before returning to me. She shook her head slightly, a small gesture, yet carrying the weight of a scream. Not now. I stepped back immediately. Vanessa appeared moments later, silk dress glimmering, her smile perfect yet her eyes calculating. Is everything all right, Dad? She asked sweetly. All good, I replied. She looped her arm through mine. Good. Then let's return to the table. Dessert will be served soon. When I glanced back, I saw Rosa half hidden in the kitchen doorway. Her eyes locked onto me, filled with both fear and determination. I understood. The cracks in this house had begun to show, and once it cracks, it will never stand firm again. Back at the dining table, Nathan poured more wine. His movements clumsy, a few drops spilling onto the table, quickly wiped away, his awkwardness betraying his tension. His jaw clenched, his eyes flicked repeatedly to the stack of papers nearby, like a hungry beast stalking prey. Vanessa smiled, but her lips trembled, her gaze glued to me. The wineglass still sat untouched beside me. I forced a smile. Tonight I won't drink, water is enough. I want a clear mind. Nathan frowned. Come on, Dad, you always enjoy a fine glass. Some habits change with time, I replied evenly. My phone vibrated again. I pretended to cough, adjusting my jacket to hide the motion of pulling it out. On the screen appeared a brief but burning message. Kitchen. 5 minutes. Alone. I sipped some water to mask my reaction. Vanessa stared, her smile twisting. Then Rosa entered, carrying a tray of cakes. White frosting gleamed. She moved gracefully, but when she set my portion down, her hand lingered on the table a moment too long. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the hallway. A clear signal. I knew then. She was the one who had sent the messages. 5 minutes later, I pushed back my chair. Excuse me, an old man. Needs the restroom a bit too often. Vanessa laughed brightly, though it cracked like broken glass. We'll keep your dessert safe for you, Dad. I stepped into the hallway, inhaling deeply, and turned into the kitchen. The door creaked open. Rosa was drying her hands, her eyes instantly scanning the doorway, then locking firmly on me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Arthur Bennett. Do not drink. Do not sign. My throat tightened. You sent the messages? She nodded firmly, eyes wide. They put something in your wine. It is not safe. Tonight they will bring out the papers, the transfer of everything. If you sign, tomorrow morning you will have nothing left. Please, be careful. The kitchen swayed around me, my fragile hope that I had only been paranoid shattered like glass hitting tile. I leaned against the counter, struggling to steady myself. How do you know this? Rosa clutched the towel tightly. I clean, I hear, I see. They speak as if I do not exist. They said clearly, if you sign, by tomorrow you will forget everything. They will have total control. Her words struck like a slap. Margaret's face rose in my mind, her laughter, her eyes, her resolve. The thought that everything could be stolen with just a signature twisted my heart painfully. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Vanessa's sweet voice hummed, drawing closer. Rosa quickly gripped my hand, whispering urgently, Please, say nothing. For both our sakes. I nodded. Vanessa entered, her smile plastered on like paint. Dad, everything all right? All fine, I replied, hiding the storm in my chest. Rosa was just complimenting the dessert. It's wonderful. Rosa bowed her head, returning to the sink. I saw her shoulders tremble slightly. Vanessa wrapped her arm around me. Come on, Nathan is eager to continue the conversation. When I returned to the table, a stack of papers had already been placed beside my plate. A notary's red seal glared under the light, like fresh blood seeping out. Nathan smiled, his voice too casual. Dad, just take a quick look. A draft, nothing binding. The papers lay there, silent, patient, like a trap waiting to snap shut. I stared at them, then raised my eyes to meet my son's. A chilling cold washed over me. Later, I murmured. Dessert first. Vanessa's smile froze. Nathan's jaw clenched, though he forced another smile. Of course, Dad. Dessert first. I lifted my spoon, tasting the smooth cake. Sweetness spread across my tongue, yet turned bitter in my throat. The papers still waited. Nathan's smile still clung, but in his eyes, a storm was gathering. And in the kitchen behind us, I knew Rosa was still listening, hoping I had heard her warning, hoping I could survive this night. The phone in my pocket vibrated again. A new message, brief but sharp as a knife. Urgent. Police. Call immediately. The two words call immediately rang straight into my head like an alarm siren. The spoon slipped from my hand, dropping onto the porcelain plate, the clinking sound stretching out, tearing apart the tense silence in the room. Nathan snapped his head up, eyes narrowing. Vanessa Reed froze mid-motion, the napkin halted at her lips. I forced a smile, inhaled deeply, suppressing it. Just clumsy. Sweat seeped into my palms, but my face remained motionless. Across from me, Nathan's smile still lingered, but the corners of his lips trembled slightly, as if about to crack wide open. Vanessa Reed dabbed her lips slowly, her eyes fixed tightly on the stack of papers placed beside my plate. "Shall I get you another spoon, Dad?" Nathan asked, his tone sounding more probing than concerned. "No need. I can handle it myself," I replied, my voice striving to stay firm. But inside the storm raged. I needed to act. I needed an ally. Among those false faces, only Rosa Delgado's trembling yet genuine words still echoed. "They treat me as if I don't exist." When dessert ended, I once again excused myself to stand up. Nathan frowned, while Vanessa Reed smiled, though her eyes followed me constantly. The hallway gleamed brightly, yet each step of mine resounded like inside a dungeon. I headed toward the kitchen. Rosa stood there, visibly tense. Her hand kept rubbing the glass, though it had long been clean. When I entered, she stiffened, her eyes flicking quickly toward the door before locking onto me. I spoke softly. "I received the message." She swallowed dryly, then blurted out urgently, her voice nearly choking. "Call the police, now. Too late is the end." I froze. Then lowering my voice, I asked, "Rosa, you've done more than I have the right to expect. Why are you helping me?" Her eyes welled with tears, but she blinked quickly to hold them back. "Because you see me as a human being, but they treat me like garbage." Her hands trembled as she wiped with the cloth. Her voice broke. "They don't care about you, Mr. Bennett. They only want what you have built. Once they take it, they will discard you, the same way they treat me." I pulled out Margaret Bennett's pocket watch, clenched it in my hand. Her words echoed, "A good person is someone who does the right thing when no one is watching." Rosa swallowed hard, then suddenly lifted her head. "Then let me help more. I know where the papers are. I can show you." My heart tightened. Evidence. Proof. "If they catch you," I worried silently. "They already consider me invisible. Perhaps that is my protection." Her voice was steady. We quietly left the kitchen, climbed the grand staircase. The lights shone upon portraits hanging along the corridor, faces with no connection to Nathan's family. Clearly Vanessa Reed's choice. At the end of the corridor, Rosa opened the office door. The air was thick with leather and ink. On the desk, a stack of files lay neatly. She pointed. "There." I stepped forward, fingers trembling as I flipped the first page. The bold title, "Power of Attorney." My name written clearly. Beneficiary. Nathan. The following pages listed the entire assets: 7 restaurants, bank accounts, the small house in Woodside, Queens, New York. My whole life compressed into a few sheets of paper, waiting for a signature after a drugged glass of wine. I inhaled deeply, holding my breath as if tightening a loose screw. Enough. If the police see these, everything will end. Rosa replied shakily, "Then we must give them to the police." I nodded, pulling out my phone. But before I could dial, footsteps sounded in the hallway, each thud like a hammer against my chest. Rosa froze. I quickly put the stack back, closing the file. We had just enough time to retreat into the corner of the room when the door swung open. Nathan stood there, a forced smile, his eyes sweeping like a flashlight searching. "Dad, I was wondering where you went." His eyes flicked to Rosa, then back to me. "I hope you're not bothering the maid with old stories." I struggled to stay calm. "Just admiring the house. Vanessa decorated it beautifully." He smirked, but his eyes lingered a little too long on the desk. "Yes, she has a talent for decorating." A heavy silence. I hurriedly stuffed the phone back into my pocket. Nathan smiled, but his voice carried a sharp edge. "Let's head downstairs, Dad. There's still much to discuss." "All right," I nodded. Rosa glanced at me, her eyes speaking clearly. "Not yet, but soon." Back at the table, Vanessa poured more wine. Nathan placed a pen right beside the stack of papers, his eyes glinting like a blade, waiting for my hand to touch it. "Whenever you're ready, Dad," he said, smiling broadly, but his finger tapped nervously on the table. Beneath the table, I clenched Margaret's watch. Its steady ticking kept me grounded. Rosa silently emerged from the kitchen, cleaning up as usual. But when her eyes met mine, I saw the promise. You are not alone. The air thickened. But something within me had shifted. I was no longer merely seeking survival. I now had an ally, and we would wait for the right moment to strike. The pen lay on the table, gleaming like a disguised silver dagger. Nathan leaned back in his chair, his smile stretched too wide. Vanessa folded her hands, her eyes occasionally flicking toward me. The wine glass remained untouched, its red glow reflecting like a warning. I pulled out Margaret's watch, its ticking nailing me into reality. I'll review the papers later, I said calmly, gently pushing the file aside. No need to rush tonight. Nathan's jaw twitched slightly, but he forced a smile. Of course, Dad, no rush. Yet the pen still sat there, a silent threat. My phone vibrated again. I peeked beneath the table. A new message. Keep the evidence. Stall for time. The police have been alerted. A cool breeze seemed to flow across my chest. Rosa was one step ahead. I exhaled slowly, then smiled, turning to Vanessa Reed. Tell me about your family. You've always been such a gracious host. Vanessa immediately softened her voice, beginning to recount her garden parties. Nathan frowned but remained silent. The stalling tactic was temporarily effective. When dinner ended, I stood. Vanessa reached out to steady Nathan. I walked straight into the kitchen. Rosa cleaned without looking up, but her voice was firm. You must keep the papers safe. Don't let them vanish. If I take them now, they'll notice immediately. Not now, after everything. She looked up, her eyes blazing. Do you trust me? I gazed at that weary yet determined face, then nodded. Yes. She handed me a hand towel, as if in a normal gesture, but within the fold lay a small USB stick. Take it. I copied the contracts, letters, emails, enough to prove everything. I was stunned. Rosa, how did you do it? I only handle cleaning the office. They think I'm invisible. Don't even bother to shut down the computer, and that's when I copied everything. I hid the USB inside my vest pocket, an object of survival. Turning back, Nathan Bennett froze at the doorway. A forced smile hung on his lips, slightly excessive, unable to conceal the tension. Are you okay, Dad? Are you okay? His voice rang out, pausing for a beat, sounding more probing than caring. I wiped my hands with the towel Rosa Delgado had just handed me, keeping my tone light and short. I'm fine. Just need to catch my breath a little. His eyes lingered a bit too long, as if trying to read all my thoughts but not confident enough. Then he nodded. Come back, we'll open another bottle. He tried to build excitement, but his voice was taut. Back at the dining table, the atmosphere thickened like a thin smoke that everyone pretended not to see. I played my part, nodded, smiled, told a few small stories about restaurants. Every word I chose carefully, but in my mind, the plan had taken shape. Stall for time, collect evidence, keep myself safe. After a while, Nathan leaned forward, voice lowered, words rushing, sounding like a rehearsed exercise. Dad, we're only trying to help. You've carried too much for too long. Let us take the burden. I looked him straight in the eyes, letting my reply cut short and sharp. Burden is not an inheritance. Don't confuse them. His smile collapsed for a fleeting moment, then rose again like a fake curtain. Vanessa Reed leaned in, refilled her husband's glass of wine. Her hand briefly touched Nathan's shoulder, quick but clear, a touch like a silent warning. Nathan leaned back, his face again hidden behind the usual mask. Time dragged. The clock hands crept, each minute as long as an hour. Every story, every smile at the table sounded forced, drifting by like a stage play. Finally, I whispered, It's late, I should go home. Vanessa Reed protested perfunctorily, Stay a little longer, Dad. But her voice lacked conviction, as though only keeping courtesy. Nathan escorted me to the front hall. He hugged me, shoulders stiff, his hand resting lightly, uncertain whether to squeeze or release. Then he whispered, his breath faster than necessary. Think about it. Tomorrow, Dad. Tomorrow. I nodded, keeping a calm face. But inside, I knew well. Tomorrow would bring something entirely different. Stepping outside, the cold night air rushed in like a blessing, far more pleasant than the suffocating room behind. I called a cab. From afar, the villa lights sparkled. Through the kitchen window, Rosa's silhouette stood still, unmoving, like a watchful shadow. Back in Woodside, Queens, New York, my little house had never seemed so humble. But it was safe. I placed the USB on the table, right next to the photo of Margaret Bennett. Her smile under the desk lamp seemed brighter. "I'm doing this for us," I whispered. I called my longtime lawyer, Martin Klein. His voice was hoarse from sleep, but he woke immediately when he heard my name. "Arthur, for you to call at this hour, something must be wrong." "I need you," I said bluntly. "There are papers, fraud, coercion, and I have proof." A pause. Then his voice sharpened. "Tell me everything." I recounted slowly, every detail, as if laying tools on a mechanic's table. He listened intently, his breathing steady. Finally, he concluded firmly, "Meet tomorrow, we'll prepare. I'll alert the authorities first thing in the morning." "Too late," I answered softly. "They've already come." A beat of silence. Then he said, voice low but clear, "Arthur, keep yourself safe until they arrive." I gave a dry laugh. That is the plan. After hanging up, I sat in the silent living room. Margaret's clock ticked steadily. The USB weighed heavy in my suit pocket. For the first time that evening, I was no longer merely defensive. I was ready. The next morning, I sat by the kitchen table, steam rising from the coffee cup, Margaret's clock ticking softly beside it. The USB Rosa had given me still lay neatly on the table, a small piece of plastic carrying the weight of an entire future. At 8:30, the phone rang. Nathan. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. "Dad." His voice was overly mechanical, as though rehearsed. "Last night on your way home, nothing happened, right?" Vanessa was so worried. I took a sip of coffee, then answered slowly. "I got home fine. And I've thought a lot about last night." Silence. Then he laughed. "Good. You agree then, right? About preparing for the future." I let the silence stretch until he grew uneasy. Then I asked directly, "Nathan, where did you get the money to buy that villa?" A pause longer than usual. "Real estate, Dad. I told you already. Don't lie to me." My voice was cold and sharp. On the other end, only heavy breathing. Then, like a cracked pipe, it burst out. "Just a few deals, risky investments, everyone does it. I only need more time." "More time for what?" His voice broke. "For the loan. For the people who—" He stopped abruptly, but it was too late. I looked at Margaret's photo on the wall. "The people, what, Nathan?" He stayed silent. "You're in debt," I said firmly. "A lot. And your solution is to drug your father and steal what he built." "Dad, it's not like that." "It's exactly like that. It's exactly like that." His breathing quickened. "You don't understand. If I don't pay, they will." He cut himself off, realizing he had slipped. "I understand more than you think," I cut in. "And the police will too when they see the papers with my name and your signature." A silence. I could almost hear the sweat dripping from his forehead. Finally, he burst out. "You can't do that. If you hand it to the police, you'll destroy me." "No, son," I said softly. "You've destroyed yourself." I hung up. The click in the kitchen echoed like a judge's gavel. That entire day, the phone rang endlessly. Missed calls from Nathan, messages from Vanessa, carefully phrased. "We love you. We only want what's best. Please don't be hasty." By mid-afternoon, a strange number called. I hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Bennett?" A man's voice, deep, cold. "Yes. Your son owes us. A lot. If he doesn't pay, we'll have to collect in other ways." I gripped the phone, but kept my tone calm. "You should know I've informed the police. If anything happens, they'll know where to look." A dry laugh rang out. "Smart. But the police aren't always fast enough." The line went dead. I set the phone down, jaw clenched tight. Now I wasn't only facing Nathan. I had come into the sights of those behind him. That night, I returned to the restaurant in Brooklyn. The staff greeted me with their usual smiles, unaware of the storm about to strike. In the small office, I closed the door, opened the laptop, plugged in the USB. The folders appeared a little disordered. Contracts, emails between Nathan and Vanessa discussing sedatives, the plan for transfer, even detailed notes about when I was most vulnerable to being isolated. Reading them was like pins driven into my heart. My name, my career, reduced to a cold transaction. One line in an email from Vanessa froze me. Arthur will yield when he relaxes, and he always does. They thought they understood me. But they were wrong. I copied everything, printed the crucial documents. The steady hum of the printer filled the room, like an engine revving before a race. By midnight, a thick file of evidence lay neatly inside the leather briefcase. Early morning. I called Nathan first. He answered immediately. "Dad, thank God. Listen, about yesterday." "Stop." I cut him off. "Come to the restaurant, 9 o'clock, my place, neutral ground." A pause. Then he reluctantly replied, "Fine, I'll come." When he arrived, his suit was wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. Vanessa did not come with him. He walked in, forcing a smile. "Dad, I blow." "Sit down." My voice was cold and sharp. Saturday. I opened the briefcase, pulled out the stack of papers, placed them down. His eyes widened. "You got these? From my house?" "From your own desk, don't pretend." His face went pale. "Dad, let me explain." "You can't. The only thing you can do is listen." I tapped the stack of papers. "And remember, the evidence is in my hands." His lips trembled. For the first time I saw real fear in my son's eyes. In panic, he burst out. "They'll kill me if I don't pay. Don't you understand? You're signing my death sentence." The confession poured out, then he froze, realizing he had said too much. I leaned back, voice steady. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you planned to poison me." His mouth opened, then closed again. No words left. I gathered the stack of papers, slid them back into the briefcase. "This conversation is over. Dad, please, get out." He hesitated, then stood, shoulders slumped, looking small and weak. As he left, I touched the clock, hearing its familiar ticking. I had delivered the first blow, and it landed. The real battle had begun. The weak morning sunlight slipped through the curtains in the kitchen, spreading pale golden streaks across the wooden table. The clock kept ticking steadily beside the coffee cup, and I was far calmer than the pounding heartbeat I'd felt that day at Nathan's house. The evidence file lay open, pages scattered like confessions no one wanted to read. I had thought last night would grant me a little peace, but no. The phone buzzed before I could finish a slice of pizza. A news alert lit up the screen. The press simultaneously reported, "A Brooklyn businessman is under investigation for shady investments," accompanied by insinuations from a source close to the family. Nathan's name wasn't directly mentioned, but every detail pointed straight at him. I understood immediately it was Rosa Delgado's hand, the one who had chosen to remain silent no longer. My breath caught in my throat. I had prepared for the police to get involved, but I never expected it to move this quickly. At 7 in the morning, the phone rang. Nathan's voice was harsh, hurried, almost shouting. "Dad, what the hell did you do? Are you trying to kill me?" I kept my tone even. I didn't call the press, but perhaps someone got tired of being disregarded. "You're destroying me!" he screamed, his voice cracking in rage and panic. "Do you think you're noble? You just dragged the whole family into the mud. Investors will pull out, banks will seize assets. Do you understand I'll lose everything?" I answered short, sharp but calm. "If there's mud, you jumped in yourself. Whether you lose everything is up to you. But forging my signature, that's something you truly did." He hissed curses, his voice breaking. "Damn it, you don't know who you're messing with." Then Vanessa Reed's voice cut in, faint but clear, like an order from behind. "Don't reveal too much." Nathan lowered his voice, trembling, fear mingled with pleading. "Listen to me, Dad. You're dragging us both to our deaths. I'm not joking. I don't have any other choice. If you don't help, they'll really finish me." I stood firm, unmoved. "If I must face it, I will, but I won't sign my life over to anyone." He burst out in desperation. This morning, one investor already canceled a contract. Do you know how much I lost? I'm about to lose everything. I breathed slowly, then said, money can be lost and earned again, but once trust is betrayed, it can never be regained. I heard his ragged, heavy breathing on the other end of the line. Dad, please, they won't let this go. They'll come for you too. Then let them come, I answered coldly. I'm ready. He screamed, his voice breaking apart. You're going to kill me. I gripped the phone tightly, spoke softly. No, Nathan. You already did that to yourself long ago. I hung up. The click echoed through the kitchen. By noon, I drove my old car to the restaurant. The engine growled beneath my feet like an old friend. The office still smelled of oil, the familiar scent that steadied me amid the storm. Carlos Alvarez, my former apprentice who now ran the restaurant, stopped by. He leaned against the doorframe, his eyes worried. Arthur, are you all right? People are talking. Word is, your son is in deep trouble. That rumor is true, I nodded slowly. He hesitated, then pulled a folded paper from his coat. I don't want to drag you deeper, but someone came by my place last week, asked about you, your health, your will, said he worked with Nathan, and he left this card. I unfolded it. The name was unfamiliar, but the logo was chillingly familiar, a notorious loan shark syndicate in the city. Carlos lowered his voice. These are not the kind of people you want to be involved with. I looked him straight in the eye. They're already involved, but thank you, Carlos. This is more serious than you think. He gripped my shoulder firmly. If you need anything, just call. Anytime I'll stand with you. A warm spark flared in my chest. An unexpected ally. That evening, I stayed late at the restaurant, combing through every page of evidence, underlining, marking emails, preparing copies. If they destroyed one set, 10 more would remain. Across town, chaos erupted. Rosa Delgado called in alarm. Hello, Mr. Bennett. Nathan and Vanessa are fighting violently. She screamed right in his face. You idiot! I won't let you drag me down with you. They're fracturing, I whispered. Yes, and they're most dangerous right now. Be careful. Late at night, the phone rang again. Vanessa, her voice sweet as honey. Dad, we've had misunderstandings. You're a reasonable man. Meet me. Just you and me. Tomorrow, all right? I don't care. Her tone hardened. Don't be foolish. You don't want your family dragged through the mud. Think of reputation. Think of Margaret. I inhaled deeply, replied coldly. You're not worthy. Don't ever speak her name again. A pause, then a hiss through clenched teeth. You'll regret this. And the line went dead. That night, I couldn't sleep. In my mind, memories of Nathan as a boy, his face smudged with grease, eyes bright as he handed me the right jar of spice. When did that boy disappear? And Vanessa, her once sweet smile, now turned to poison. I thought of Rosa, a woman always overlooked, now risking her life to warn me. I realized I wasn't only fighting for property, I was fighting for truth, for dignity, and for the invisible ones who refused to remain invisible. The next morning my lawyer called, his voice quick, precise. Arthur, the prosecutor wants to act fast. Tomorrow they'll officially issue a subpoena for the files. That means today is your last quiet day. I nodded, though he couldn't see. Then today I'll prepare. I stood in the living room, breathing in the silence. On the mantel, Margaret smiled down at me. Tomorrow, I whispered. Tomorrow they will have to face the truth. I placed the evidence file into the leather case, locked it twice, and set it by the door. The storm had risen, but I was ready to step straight into its eye. The courthouse carried the faint scent of old wood and the light of justice. The echo of my shoes striking the wooden floor mixed with the cold glare of the fluorescent lights above. I pushed open the heavy door, clutching the leather briefcase tightly in my hand, as though it were the only thing keeping me steady. Outside on the steps, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing relentlessly. Nathan's name echoed without end, like a flock of hungry crows circling for the kill. But inside, the silence was heavier. Every eye followed me, weighing each step of an old, thin man in a worn coat. Let them think I was frail. They would soon see differently. Nathan sat at the defendant's table. His face was pale, beads of sweat rolling down his temples. His fingers twisted at his tie, pulling it straight and then letting it go, as though he could not find a place to hold on to. The confidence he once wore was gone. Beside him, Vanessa Reed maintained her perfect poise, her red lipstick intact, but when our eyes met, hers wavered for a brief second, revealing a flicker of fear before she quickly masked it again. A sharp knock rang out. The court is now in session. The judge, silver-haired and stern-faced, took her seat on the high bench. The prosecutor rose, his voice booming. "Your Honor, the state charges Nathan Bennett with attempted fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to seize his father's assets. Today, we will show not only intent, but also clear, deliberate actions." The accusation spread across the courtroom. Nathan sank lower in his seat, darting his eyes toward Vanessa for reassurance, but only met her cold, evasive stare. The prosecutor began laying out the timeline: forged documents, falsified signatures, emails discussing sedatives. One by one, the pages of evidence I had gathered appeared on the projector screen. I sat still, nodding slightly, my eyes fixed on the screen. At last, the truth was being brought into the light. Nathan's lawyer struggled, raising objection after objection, but each one was struck down by the judge's gavel. Then, the first witness was called. We summoned Rosa Delgado. The room erupted in whispers. Nathan spun around, his eyes wide, biting his lip until it bled. Vanessa stiffened, as if she could not grasp what was unfolding. Rosa stepped onto the stand, clutching her purse, her hands trembling slightly though her eyes burned with resolve. When she raised her hand to take the oath, her voice rang steady. She told everything. The whispers she overheard through doors, the night she went to the bathroom, the way Vanessa had purchased sedatives with a forged prescription. Her words poured out like a river breaking through a dam. Nathan's lawyer pounced. "Mrs. Delgado, aren't you just a bitter employee, resentful because you were fired?" Rosa lifted her chin. "Fired?" I resigned. "Because I refused to remain a silent witness to injustice." Her gaze flicked briefly toward me. I gave her a small nod. Then suddenly, Vanessa requested to speak. Her attorney panicked, shaking his head and whispering in protest, but she stood anyway. She drew a deep breath, her tone shifting smoothly like an actress changing roles. "Your Honor, I wish to cooperate with the prosecution. I have emails, statements, correspondence proving it was Nathan who orchestrated everything. I was deceived. I was coerced." Nathan roared, his voice cracking in panic and rage. "She's lying. She set this all up. I was trapped." The gavel slammed. The judge ordered him to remain silent. Vanessa continued, her gaze fixed firmly on the judge, completely ignoring her husband. "I have evidence, and I am ready to hand it over in exchange for leniency." The courtroom buzzed. Vanessa, his wife, had thrown him to the wolves. I did not move, but inside I felt the wheels of fate locking into place. The prosecutor immediately presented further evidence: bank transfers from Nathan's accounts, payment orders to notorious loan sharks, even a recording of him begging for more time. The noose tightened around my son's neck. Nathan flailed, stammering. "I did it all, for the family. Father, you must understand." I gave no reply, my hand only tightening around the pocket watch. The prosecutor turned to me. "Mr. Bennett, please tell the court why you are here today." I stood, my voice low yet clear. "I am here because my son thought I was weak. He thought he could erase me. But strength is not measured by shouts, nor by the wealth he tried to steal. It is measured by what we never lose: the memory of my wife, the labor of my life, my dignity. That is why I am here. To prove that some things cannot be taken, truth and honor." The entire room fell silent. Even the reporters stopped writing. The judge's eyes softened briefly before she looked back down at the files. The jury took only an hour to return. The foreman rose. "For the charges of fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to seize assets, we find the defendant, Nathan Bennett, guilty." The word guilty rang out like a bell tolling the end of an era. Nathan collapsed against the back of his chair, his breath ragged, his hands gripping the armrests unconsciously. Then he glared at me, his voice breaking into desperate pleas. "Father, please, you can't let them do this. I'm your son." I looked straight at him, my gaze calm. "You ceased being my son the moment you tried to poison me." His screams echoed as the officers led him away, the handcuffs clinking. Vanessa sat motionless, her face as cold as stone, already leaning toward the prosecutor, whispering about her own escape route. The judge's gavel thundered. "This court is adjourned." When the courtroom gradually emptied, I remained seated for a while longer. The wooden bench beneath me creaked in the silence, like the last echo of a long battle. The pale light of the late day filtered through the tall windows, casting a thin stripe across the wooden floor, evoking the sense of closing a heavy chapter. The leather briefcase in my hand now felt lighter. Justice had carried its part. I rose slowly, my hand tightening around Margaret Bennett's pocket watch. Her time, her rhythm now merged with every beat of my heart. Stepping out of the courthouse doors, reporters' questions rattled like gunfire, flashes bursting relentlessly. Microphones were thrust forward like grasping hands, but I did not respond. Some truths need no repetition. They stand on their own. The winter wind swept across the wide courtyard, stinging my face with cold, making the emptiness more vivid. Yet within me, a strange warmth spread. I drove my old car home. The familiar shudder of the engine was there, but this time the sound was different. Not a burden, not a reminder of age, but of resilience and loyalty, much like myself. As the car turned into the driveway, the porch light I had repaired earlier that year still shone brightly, illuminating the steps. The soft creak of the door greeted me as I entered the house, like a sad welcome. But for the first time, I no longer felt this house was too big for one solitary man. I hung my coat on the rack, placed Margaret's watch on the mantel. My hand released it slowly, as though letting go of a burden, as though parting with a piece of memory. Her photograph still smiled at me. My eyes blurred, but my voice was steady. "It's done." The days that followed passed slowly. The newspapers were filled with news that Nathan Bennett was imprisoned without bail. I read a few lines, then folded the paper, my gaze distant. Vanessa Reed disappeared into the system, her name mentioned less and less, but the aftertaste of betrayal lingered within me. The neighbors looked at me differently. No longer pity, no longer disdain, but respect. At the supermarket, Mrs. Whitaker from down the street lightly touched my hand. "Arthur, you did the right thing. Not many men dare to face their own son like that." I bowed my head slightly, concealing my emotions. Sometimes, doing the right thing doesn't feel like victory, but it still is victory. She squeezed my hand gently. "It is victory." One afternoon, Carlos Alvarez stopped by, handing me a new set of keys. "The restaurant is yours again, Arthur. This morning I cleared your name at the registry office. No more disputes." I traced the shiny grooves of the metal for a long time, my gaze distant, as though seeing both past and present. "It feels like beginning again." Carlos shook his head. "Not beginning again. A new beginning. There's a difference." On another day, Rosa Delgado knocked on the door. Her footsteps on the porch were cautious, but no longer trembling. She carried a small tin box. "I baked a cake, thought you might like it." I invited her in. Steam from the hot coffee blurred my glasses. She glanced around the room, Margaret's photograph, the tidy bookshelf. "You loved her very much." "I still love her." Rosa nodded firmly. "She would be proud. Of you, of the way you stood strong." I did not reply. My eyes stung. For the first time in years, the house no longer felt empty. A week later, a letter arrived. Handwritten. Nathan's script, shaky, ink smudged here and there. I hesitated before opening it. "Father, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I'm not sure I deserve to be called your son anymore. But in this cell, having lost everything, I finally see what I have become. If there is anything left in me worth saving, it is because of you." I don't expect a reply. I just needed to say it. "Nathan." I gazed at the handwriting for a long time, my fingers brushing the smudged ink as if touching a living regret. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in Margaret's Bible, between the pages where she once pressed dried flowers. I closed the book slowly, sealing a chapter full of scars. I understood. Forgiveness was not for him but for me, to free myself. On Sunday I drove to the cemetery where Margaret rested. The wind whispered through the bare trees, like distant voices. The ground was still frosted with dew. I cleaned the headstone, placed white lilies at its base. My hand trembled slightly, not from cold, but from the loss that never healed. I thought revenge would be louder, I whispered. But it feels like this quiet, steady, like breathing again after holding it too long. In the silence, I felt her near. I stayed until the sun touched the horizon, painting the sky gold. That night, as I locked the restaurant, I noticed a small object on the table, the toy car Nathan had once left behind. Its wheels rusted, loose. I picked it up, turning it in my hands. For a fleeting moment, he was 7 again, cheeks smeared with oil, grinning brightly as he helped me cook under my guidance. I sighed softly, a faint smile tinged with bitterness crossing my face. Then I placed the toy car gently on the shelf, as though afraid to shatter a fragile memory. And so it ended. Not with a shout, not with fists, not with glory, but with silence. The silence of the pocket watch still ticking in the house that now belonged to me again. The silence of the restaurant reclaimed. The silence of a name restored. The silence of dignity no one could steal. I did not win by destroying them. I won by not letting myself be destroyed. And as I sit tonight, coffee still steaming, the heat fogging my glasses, I know the greatest revenge is not the echo, but the final silence, the silence that frees, yet leaves behind a void nothing can ever fill.